First final in the tour, and in a couple of weeks, Ding will play in the candidates tournament. He is definitely in great shape. And of course, we're wondering, actually now I'm seeing Pragg has the white pieces. That means Ding, actually, who scored the better in the preliminaries, has chosen to start with the black. That's very unusual.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe he just wants to hold with black, and in this manner, he will end on a white Ding. So he'll end with a game that maybe he knows what result he needs. Meanwhile, Heidi, are we going to see your favorite, the Nimzo Indian?
It looks like it.
Yay!
Great.
If black's dark squared bishop comes out now, we will see the Nimzo Indian defense. Or Ding could opt for the Queen's Gambit declined by pushing the black pawn in the center forward 2 squares. What do you think we'll see?
I think we're going to see the Nimzo Indian. I mean, most of the top players, when given the chance to play it, they do. It's a critical, cutting-edge opening, gives lots of fighting chess, and I was wrong.
We jinxed it. We jinxed it. It's the Queen's Gambit declined.
Aha. And we did see that Ding, with the white pieces, though, had a great score with this opening.
Yep, very decent score, Ding. And I think he's just an expert on both sides of this type of position, with white, with black. Ding has been playing these positions since he was very, very young, since he was even younger than Pragg. So we see the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. A couple of pawns have left the board. Now white stepping forward with his own pawn. Black has a variety of different setups, different moves in this position. Normally black's bishop comes out. The light square bishop or the dark square bishop can both develop at this moment. OK, first he challenges white's bishop. Bishop steps back. This is actually quite trendy, Jovanka. I know a lot of top players have been playing this variation just in the last few weeks alone.
Yeah, it is trendy. And one thing I just wanted to point out is that the white queen, by staying, well, actually, not the white queen, by the white knight not developing, the black hasn't been able to trade off dark square bishops. But anyway, OK.
Yeah, that means all pieces on the board, and it's likely to stay that way for a while. Black's knight now has developed, and here, usually we see white's queen maybe take a step forward, connecting the white rooks, just simple development. There are other options for Pragg. You could step forward with a couple of different pawns, maybe. Often we see the dark squared bishops leave the board in a position like this, but black is a bit cramped. Black has slightly less space than white, so any exchanges will help black. And this pawn push, this idea, I'm not sure it was this exact position, but at least this idea of pushing this pawn, there was a very famous case just 2 weeks ago, and I think it was Fabiano Caruana introduced this move. 1 hour later, Jordan van Vriest played the move as well, and it had never been seen before that one day, and it was played twice in the same day by 2 different players on opposite sides of the world. So, really interesting pawn push.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, David, because actually I've never seen it before. So now I know it. This is cutting-edge theory. I was like, oh, hang on a second, that's not normal. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And dark squared bishops off the board. And this is the big idea. The pawn is just going to march forward and take as much space as possible.
Yeah, white's idea here with this pawn push, as Jovanka mentioned, is firstly to gain space. Sometimes you can kind of destabilize this black structure by pushing even further forward, asking a question of this black pawn. Either black will take you and ruin the pawn structure, or black will have to bypass your pawn, and you have this kind of wedge in the position. For an endgame, this pawn is going to be very, very dangerous. So that's one interesting idea. And also, you do have the option to maneuver your knight into this dark square. This is a very typical idea. Because this pawn lies on a dark square, black can never really break out and challenge. So you have kind of created a semi-outpost for your knight. And yeah, this was a completely new position until 2 weeks ago. That's how fast news travels in chess. All the top players going for this trendy variation.
Wow.
When we learn how to play chess, or when we give good advice to new people to play chess, one of the advice are that you shouldn't move the same piece more than once in the opening. But here we see that Pragg has moved his pawn. Why is that a good move?
This pawn forward. Yeah, I guess it's partly to gain space. I think Pragg has pretty much completed development now, at least with his minor pieces. The non-minor pieces are on decent squares, very centralized squares, ready to kind of play on both sides of the board, depending on what they need to do. I am slightly surprised that he hasn't moved his queen yet. As mentioned, for example, in the current position, he could move his queen, connect his 2 rooks, and the rooks are flexible. Maybe they'll want to play on this side of the board, supporting their pawns. Maybe they'll want to play in the center later. Another common idea would be to just move the rook across 1 square, later kind of play for a pawn break in the middle of the board. You're right there, Heidi. I think he should start developing. You don't necessarily want to get carried away with any pawn pushes yet. You want to decide where your pieces go first. And you also mentioned moving the same piece several times. Black has moved this knight twice already, kind of rerouting it towards the king side. He's also moved this knight to the edge of the board twice. So Black's maybe lacking in development compared to White just because he's messed around with his knights. Black, I think here, Ding would love to get his bishop out, for example, to develop it. And he would love to centralize his rook on the next go. He needs to get all of his pieces to better squares. At the moment, I think that's maybe where the evaluation bar slightly favors White, just because White is slightly more ready. White also has more space, thanks to the advance of this pawn.
Yeah. One of the things that I found always very uncomfortable with Black, because I do have experience, not exactly in this particular position, is that the light square bishop does develop, but it doesn't actually have a role. You know, once Black does all the happy moves, then he just has to sit and react to whatever White comes up with. And it's going to be an interesting battling ground. And I'm just... I love the fact, as David pointed out earlier, that this is like super new theory. You know, it's like literally from 2 weeks ago, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like, but I mean, this is just, it's incredible, especially when you think about in the past when players it took weeks to find new theory, new ideas, and they were scouring magazines. And actually we have a very interesting move from White, deploying the knight to the back row in order to attack the Black knight on the edge of the board.
Yeah, maybe we can show this because it looks really weird, retreating the knight back to the first rank. As Ivanka said, first of all, there is a threat that you have unleashed an attack against the Black knight, which now steps back, actually to a better square. But I think Pragg's main idea is sometimes you have to kind of take a step back to go forward. And yeah, sometimes it's just like in life. You have to admit a mistake in order to kind of improve things in future. And the White knight is destined for this square. It does feel, however, like the White king is a bit, well, I don't want to say naked, but it doesn't have many protectors around it. So at some point we might see Black's pieces kind of gravitate towards the White king. Maybe Simon, I'm missing him in here in the studio, but maybe this idea of pushing the Black pawn forward because the White king has no defenders. And that's normally a trigger. That's a signal that you should attack if your opponent has no defensive pieces. Meanwhile, Pragg will try and play on the opposite flank of the board. White's knights will start to jump in. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but they look nice and pretty.
All right. But we're basically out of the opening now.
Just about, yeah.
Both kings get it going to safety. So, all right.
Early middle game.
Yeah. And but we're going to talk about openings for 1 second now because we haven't launched the quiz of the day, Ivanka.
No, we haven't launched the quiz of the day. I was just about to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, this is the Chessable Masters and it's all about openings. And we are asking for our quiz of the day, what is your opening nightmare? We are asking you to recall all those bad memories. And it's a Chessable prize up for grabs. And this time it's the Grand Ruy Lopez by Niels Grandelius. He was actually playing early on in the preliminaries.
Yeah.
And, well, in order to have a chance to win this awesome prize, you have to tweet your answer using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And, yep, just tell us your deepest, darkest opening nightmares.
Absolutely. And later today, we're going to deep dive into the Ruy Lopez opening. Yesterday, we were talking about an opening that it looked really old, the pictures of the Caro-Kann.
Are you giving some spoilers,
Well,
Kaya?
because I checked some pictures, I wanted to find out who's behind the Ruy Lopez opening. And there weren't any pictures. There were only paintings of the owner of that opening. So it's an old one.
It's an ancient one, Kaya. It's so old. Yeah, but you know, it has a great history, as you'll find out. And
Old is gold, with the best openings are the oldest ones.
oh, okay.
And okay, Ding just moves his rook across one square. Again, a bit mysterious. He's maybe just hinting that he'll push some black pawns on this side of the board. And okay, the move goes back to Pragg. It's all about slow maneuvering and planning. And Heidi, you mentioned about your chess strength, but how would you kind of describe your style? What type of positions do you like to play? Do you like these kind of slow block positions, or are you more direct?
Yeah, I prefer the slow positions. I like to maneuver, and whenever we play at my club, I'm normally one of the ones that sit at the end. So I finish really, really, really late. Because I'm not that good at openings, I'm better at the end game. I've been working a lot more on the end game than on the opening.
Okay.
So the further along in the game you get, the higher are my chances of winning.
Okay, nice. And I think that's quite representative of some of the viewers at home. The opening can be so hard to study, it takes a lot of time, but working on endgames, you found that's the way to improve.
Yeah, but I realize I have to, because when I lose, I often lose in the opening. So I have to work a lot more on my openings, definitely.
So what is I'm just going to put the quiz of the day on you. What is your opening nightmare?
It's the French defense, meeting the French defense. It's the worst. It's so bad that when you play, I don't know if I can see the moves now, but I played E5 in the second game just to sort of stop the the French.
Oh, so, that's radical.
Yeah, I know, but because I've lost so many games. But now I'm trying to learn.
So here you push your pawn forward one square.
Yes.
Yeah, just to, for example, meet a pawn push with maybe an exchange and a trade. So just to show that point, French defense, it's a scary opening.
But it's a terrible move. But then at least my opponents don't know what to do next. So we're sort of on even grounds, I think. I don't know what to do, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll talk more about opening nightmares in a minute, but I'm not sure whether this move's going to give Pragg too many nightmares. I would be happy to see this one if I were Pragg here as white, because normally in this type of pawn structure, if you compare the pawns in the middle of the board, white's pawns point in this direction, so usually white is actually playing towards this side of the board, towards the queen side. Black's pawns, they actually point towards this side, so black should be playing down towards the white king. By touching his pawns on this side of the board, it goes against conventional wisdom. It does actually make this pawn a bit weak. It's a bit of a target now. For example, if the white knight jumps out the way, at some point the white queen will attack it. The white rook can slide across to attack it as well. And it just feels like Ding maybe just a bit uncomfortable, and this pawn is going to cause him a lot of trouble long term. That being said, he has stopped these white knights from jumping in. These two white knights are temporarily dominated by these two pawns. So I understand what he's doing. I don't like it too much myself, but maybe he just feels that he wants to stop Pragg's plan. He just wants to stop Pragg's knights getting active, and for now, that's enough for Ding. Maybe he'll just put his bishop on this square long term to kind of protect its weakness on the c6 square. So still very cagey maneuvering stuff. And how about yourself, Jovanka? Chess nightmares? Nightmares.
Well, I do have chess nightmares, actually, and they almost always involve the opening stage, where I get to the board and someone has played the most ridiculous opening, or my king is being attacked and it's super sharp and I don't know what I'm doing. And then I'm like, but this is not my game. I didn't make these moves. And that is normally a quite recurring nightmare, I have to say. But when it comes to like opening nightmares is when my king is unsafe. I really don't like it if my king is out there exposed and, I have no good place to put it. And, well, we've seen a trade of pawns. And since the circuits of the knights have been dominated, the knight takes a step back and is set to find itself a new home.
Yeah, maybe heading towards the centre of the board. This is quite a key square in the Queen's Gambit declined. The players are just using pattern recognition to realise where they want to put their pieces. Also, white does have control over an open line now. So it did take a long time. White had to push a pawn forward once, twice, 3 times, just to create an open line for his rook. But it can be quite effective. And look out for this rook at a convenient moment, maybe entering the black position later on. At the moment, all entry squares in the black half of the board are covered. You can't bring your rook in, but it might be something that Ding has to be careful of.
And Ding has still not moved his bishop.
Yeah, true. And actually, Jovanka mentioned it, this is the problem piece often in this opening, because no matter where you put it, even if you put it on a semi-active square, it actually gets blocked in by its own pawns. Black's pawns on light squares in the middle of the board, and therefore this is technically a bad bishop. If you compare it to White's bishop is actually a really good piece because it's kind of supported and complemented by pawns on dark squares. Pawns control dark squares, bishop controls light squares. This is like the ideal formation. That's why I slightly prefer White's position. That being said, at the moment, Black doesn't have too many threats to worry about. I would be starting to maybe develop the black knight out. I really want to kind of start attacking towards the white king somehow. Not sure exactly how you break through, but you need to improve, as Heidi says, this bishop and this knight.
Yeah.
And, well, Ding is definitely thinking about his plan in this first game, in the final. Let's head out to the good night, to Simon. His plan is to have fun today. What's happening, Simon?
Well, I'm in my natural habitat here, a chess pub. There can't be a better place in the world. You can have a little look. There's not just chess going on here. There's obviously a bit of drinking going on at this table as well. But there's plenty of games of chess going on everywhere if the camera springs around. But we do have over here a very special guest who has his own podcast. So I'll just let him introduce himself.
That's nice.
If you just say your name, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm David. I'm host of 64 Chess Podcast.
Brilliant. And we're talking about openings today. What's your favourite opening?
My favorite opening is the Carol Khan.
Oh, I feel sorry for you there. Sorry, Ivanka. But we're here, and who do you think is going to win the match as well? Do you think it's going to be Pragg or Ding?
I'm a big Ding fan, but you got to look at Praggnanandha's games, and I mean, this guy, he's doing something really special right now. I mean, he has finals or something in India, like he has school exams, and he's coming, and he's just making world-class players look like fools. I don't know. I can't bet against him.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, you said it correctly there. And it's quite nice to have a podcaster be interviewed for a change. But it's really heating up here. There's loads of people having a lot of fun. You can come down. This is a place in Oslo. Everyone's welcome. You can have a drink, play some chess. The atmosphere is fantastic. And I'm watching you guys here in the studio. And I'm maybe having a little drink. Of course, that's only water because I'm a professional. But yeah, back to the studio.
Enjoy yourself, Simon, and we will check in with you later, of course. First game in the final in Chessable Masters is going on. We did have a couple of moves. Can we see Ding Liren's plan in this game?
We've definitely seen his plan over the last couple of turns, and actually the position has changed considerably since we last there, and it's all to do with pawns pushing forward. And actually, just when we left it, it was this position. Black decided, OK, now is the moment. I thought maybe he would prepare this with a knight jump or a bishop move, but no, Ding is far more direct. He sees the moment to push forward, and I'm slightly surprised here that Pragg kind of left this tension and these pawns looking at each other. I don't think you necessarily want to take Black's pawn, because now Black gets a nice pawn centre. Black's rook suddenly, this mysterious rook move from earlier, it suddenly looks like a genius stroke because the rook is now on an open line. So Pragg decided, OK, he just brings his knight to a better square, defends his centre, and that has allowed Ding now to step forward again. To be honest, I would have maybe brought my bishop forward to attack the black rook and just maintain the tension in this way. But now, in the current position, after Ding stepped forward, attacking the white bishop, we do see White's bishop move, offering a trade, and now the black pawn stepping forward. And the reason I'm slightly surprised is, as Heidi mentioned, this bishop is doing nothing. It's sat there the whole game on its starting square, and White now is the one who's just spent a couple of moves trying to trade off a piece that's not really done anything the whole game. It feels like White's lost a bit of time, and meanwhile, these black pawns, long term, watch out for them. They're going to start stepping down the board. They might be quite scary. Any endgame, Black is going to have a big advantage because of these two pawns. They could potentially become a passed pawn later in the game.
And White only has one pawn to protect.
Yeah. These two later, let's ignore the rest of the pawns, but these two are playing against this one, you're right. So if all of the pieces disappear, Black is actually just going to win. And yeah, Pragg needs to play a bit more dynamically now. Maybe that involves bringing the white knight into the centre. We mentioned that this white knight is on a great square. And Ivanka, you taught me about this one in this type of structure. OK, he does play this. There's actually a knight fork threatened as well. The white knight wants to jump into the c6 square, attacking the black queen, attacking the black rook. So this is a big threat, which Ding needs to defend against.
I'm going to be honest with you here, David. I hate Praggnanandha's position. And it's not often that you'll hear me say I hate, but I mean, it really is, to me, a dream Queen's Gambit declined. And just look at those queen side, those left pawns on the left. I mean, just look at them. They're so far up the board, and normally they live somewhere else and they're restrained. And this is just feels like it's so beautiful. And also, I suspect that the light squared bishops are going to get traded off, as you mentioned, and no problem whatsoever for Ding.
Yeah, I mean, all you need to do is maybe guard against this knight jump I'm not sure exactly how. For example, you can move your rook up the board, and at some point, these pawns are just going to start rolling, kicking away the white knights in the process. And you can even gain time kicking away the white queen if you want with a pawn push. Yeah, it does feel like things are heading in Ding's favour. And look at the evaluation bar. I'm not sure whether bishop takes bishop is even the best move, but maybe there are options. The computer liking black, I think aesthetically it looks great for black. It's all because of these pawns. I'm not sure Pragg should have allowed them this far down the board.
And the opening stat, so this was the Queen's Gambit declined. And I did take a look at the opening stats here for Pragg with the white pieces. It's a 60%, so let me find it, there we go. Am I looking at the right? I think he has a 60% score, there we go. 60% score, but he's also lost 2 games and won 3 games in this opening. So it seems like a risky choice.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's regarded as quite a solid opening for both sides, but Pragg, lots of decisive results, winning a few, losing a few in this opening. It doesn't feel like this one is anywhere near a draw. It definitely feels like long-term, I mean, short-term, there's going to be imbalances, pieces all around. White has the open file. But long-term, black is the one with the chances, so I can't see this one fizzling out or getting simplified or being safe for either side anytime soon.
It doesn't feel safe at all for white, and yeah, I really don't like it. I've said it again. I said it once, I'll say it again. You know, I just don't see what white's pieces are doing, and black has a very nice plan. He has the space. And I mean, also, I'd like to go back to an idea that David mentioned many, many moons ago, and that was actually maybe at the right time, once you've controlled everything on the left, you can actually start advancing on the right. You know, I've seen some beautiful plans from AlphaZero where the pawn, H-pawn, of course, moves up the board.
Yeah, later on. I never know why. It's so hard to explain, but just in this type of pawn structure, it's always black pushing towards the white king. Maybe it's just because white's king has no defenders around it. If you compare, black's king has 2 nice knights. That's the rhyme. Knight on f8, there is no mate. And black's king is always going to be safe once this knight sits here, whereas the white king, no defenders. So yeah, that's an interesting point for later. Watch out for an attack. Black can maybe distract white with these pawn pushes. OK, first he trades off the bishops, OK, wow, now he goes for this pawn push. I said that this was a threat, the knight jumping in, attacking the black queen, but Ding has completely ignored that. He's attacking the white knight now, and if we see white threaten the black queen, maybe the black queen just moves, and after the white knight captures this black rook, suddenly we see a situation where black is temporarily down a rook for a knight, but this white knight is almost trapped. It has nowhere to go to apart from the side of the board, and then suddenly look at black's pawns. We talked about the black pawns. This one now attacking the white rook, and when the rook moves, I mean, firstly, this knight is hanging, but secondly, these pawns are just rolling down the board. It looks fantastic for Ding. I think really well calculated. Now, in the current position, I don't think Pragg can get greedy and jump in with his knight. I think he would actually lose if he did this. He just needs to run away with his other knight, but that's a step in the wrong direction. If he jumps back with his knight, black is left with these glorious pawns. As Heidi mentioned, it's 2 versus 1 on this side of the board. Short-term and long-term, that's a big, big problem for white. If you compare white's pawns, these pawns are just going nowhere. It's definitely advantage Ding right now.
Yeah, those black pawns look scary. And if you were sitting on this board with the white pieces, Heidi, how would you feel?
I would not be very happy.
Yeah.
It feels like the black pawns are coming so close, and where you're supposed to put your knight, I would feel like I would just have to defend, and I would not like it at all. And I'm quite surprised. It feels like it changed so quickly. Yeah. I think Pragg looked so confident. He looked like he was going in the right direction, and now it just seems like he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And actually, talking of the knights, white's knight in the centre of the board on the e5 square next to the white queen, that has moved 6 times to get there. This other white knight that's just retreated, just stepped back, that's moved twice. So he's lost a lot of time with his knights. And especially the knight that's moved back, not a great piece anymore. The knight in the centre of the board looks great, but it might just get traded off at some point. And then you've lost 6 or 7 moves. And in the meantime, black has used those moves to start pushing his pawns. Yeah, it feels like Pragg is maybe just playing move by move, but Ding has got a bigger long-term strategy in mind. And now, OK, white's knight is safe, so that threat is in the air, the other knight jumping to attack the black queen. I'm sure Ding will deal with that, though. Maybe one of the black rooks will move. Maybe the black queen can move. Lots of choice, lots of pleasant choice for Ding.
I know a lot of people who watch chess play on an app or play against friends, and one of those things that might be quite difficult is when to push the pawns. Like, you know, now they're quite far ahead, but when do you actually try to move them forward?
Definitely.
That's a very good question. I guess the first thing I would be looking for here for Ding, okay, he actually challenges this open line. I mentioned this was an open line. He challenges with his rook. Yeah, the first thing I would be looking for here is, okay, can I push my pawns? But the other thing you have to kind of, this is the hardest thing in chess, simultaneously juggle what you want to do and what your opponent wants to do. And your opponent here has this big threat of the knight jumping in, as we showed, attacking black's queen and rook. So first I would want to deal with that. And also, again, it's such a hard decision when to push these pawns. I think at the moment, this square is covered sufficiently. It's covered twice by white, so you can't really push this one. You don't necessarily want to push this one either because you block up your own pawns. Often, actually, pawns are much more, I mean, they have better potential when they are side by side like this. That means you tease your opponent. Every move, your opponent has to worry about one pawn pushing forward or the other one pushing forward. You don't really want to, for example, just block things up and lose the integrity of your pawns because now, for example, now it's completely blocked up. You need to definitely, I think when in doubt, just keep your pawns side by side. That's the general rule, just because they are more flexible this way. It's not clear which one is pushing. But in the current position, there was a threat, so Ding moves his rook across. Also, long-term stuff, like having a potential pass pawn, that actually becomes much more important in the endgame because the pawns will be harder to stop if white doesn't have pieces to stop them with. So I think Ding's strategy of trying to trade off rooks, that helps long-term because then the pawns will become even better. And yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I've really struggled with pawns. I still struggle with pawn structures sometimes, unfamiliar pawn structures especially. And meanwhile, okay, white's knights are looking okay. I don't really know what they're doing. Everything's defended, but they look okay for now.
Yeah, and I think looking okay is good when you need to be dynamic. At least one knight has its eyes on the pawn in the middle of the board, which could be potentially quite weak.
Yeah, black's defending it sufficiently for now with one knight, but as Jovanka mentions, it's a target, and white is doing the right thing. When your opponent has strong pawns, you need to target the base of the pawn chain. So this is the furthest back pawn, the protector. So you want to target the protector. If this pawn falls, the rest of black's pawns might fall. So that is what Pragg is trying to do, meanwhile.
And we also always talk about that F5 square. The knights on F5 will thrive. Both of the knights are very close, but they are not on F5. How big of a difference is it in this position?
Yeah, it's quite a big difference. You're right, Kaya. The white queen, she looks nice and pretty on the F5 square, but she's not actually threatening or doing anything. Again, she's more worried about her own appearance than actual kind of influencing the game right now. And Ding, interesting decision. He's being consistent. He's trying to force the exchanges. Okay, this knight jump, I'm not 100% sure about it. It feels a bit loose somehow. Jovanka, what do you think of, I mean, knights coming off the board, it should favour black?
It should favour black, I agree, but I was more interested in actually pushing the queen back, the white queen. You know, it's in the middle of the board, it's on black side, and I was kind of thinking that queen should not be anywhere over there. But then again, it's a solid move, I feel. I mean, it's not a disastrous move, but probably Pragg, like you say, will be a little bit happy to see this type of moves.
Yeah, I mean, just instinct-wise, it felt a bit loose. I can't see a refutation, though. I still really don't like white's position. And maybe it's becoming a bit time-sensitive now. If you allow all the knights to disappear, it's going to be one-sided with black's pawns racing down. Also, Pragg, he has had time trouble issues, and this is the type of position that if you do drop down to 1-2 minutes on the clock, it's so hard to handle for white. I think it's much easier to play with black, this type of position. You can just bully your opponent because you have those pawns. You can say, okay, I'm going to trade off, or I'm going to try and trade things off. You have to run away from the exchanges. And yeah, difficult moments for the teenager right now.
Ticking under 4 minutes, Pragg now in game one, and Ding is, as always, just looking super calm, super focused, and probably super confident after beating world champion Magnus Carlsen yesterday. He's just in great shape, the Chinese.
Very good shape. And Heidi, how are you when you're low on the clock? Do you like playing faster games, for example?
No, I know that's terrible. I need a lot of time. Yeah, I prefer playing classical chess. I'm a lot better at classical chess than in rapid and in blitz.
Okay.
So I normally, when I play classical chess, if I have, you know, the clock, if it's under 20 minutes, you start to see the seconds count down, and then my heart starts to go.
So if you're in Pragg's shoes right now, you would be.
I would be quite stressed. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That happens to me actually when I've got less than a minute on the clock. I don't know, it's like somehow I spend most of my energy like looking at the clock tick down instead of actually focusing on the moves. But I've noticed the top players actually, and especially David, he's so calm. He's just sat there and just looking, and then they let their clocks go down to 3 seconds, and then they make a move. And I'm like, okay, well, easy for some. Others, like you, it's like the adrenaline is pumping. I'm making some crazy hand gestures here, there, and everywhere. So, yeah, nightmare.
And when I have like 3 seconds left on the clock, I don't press the clock quietly. It goes like really fast because I can't lose any time.
Yeah, actually, I was. Well, recently I played an opponent who he would go down to 1 second every single move, and then not just that, but after making the move, he would stand up and just circle the board. He gains 30 seconds after every move, but he has 30 seconds, and he was just walking around me. I was kind of like, I mean, I know I'm quite calm, but he's just, I don't know how he does it, just ice cold.
But did that mess with your head a bit? He did that? Yeah.
So much.
Do you think it was his tactics?
Maybe. He had really loud shoes as well.
What?
Yeah, but okay, wow.
Oh, and
Yeah, a night jump. I didn't expect this one, I've got to say, but not just that, but Pragg, he was looking around. He looked like he was disturbed by something. Maybe that's just the stress of going under 2 minutes now on the clock. And this night jump for white, I mean, he's offering a trade of one of black's defensive pieces, but again, it feels so strange. I'm not sure what the exact idea is. If we jump in, white's knight now going to the edge of the board. He's trying to attack this black knight, but for example, if I just trade it off, what has white really achieved here? Everything that the white queen is attacking or the white knight is attacking, they're actually defended very well. And here it might be time, as Heidi mentioned, to start thinking about pushing one of these 2 pawns forward. I'm not sure which one, but white's pieces have gone on the other side of the board, and that is normally the signal once more. If your opponent's focusing on one side and you don't think they have any threats, you can play on the opposite side of the board. Okay, he doesn't exchange off this knight, though. Ding jumps into the center. Really brave. These knights now make quite a nice impression. But, okay, is white's knight strong on the side of the board? Is it actually threatening anything? That is the question for Pragg. If he can utilize his 2 knights now to form some kind of attack against the black king, he's doing great. But if he can't attack the black king, then they just look silly, these knights.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
I actually thought he would just capture the knight. But anyhow, here with this knight jump, I kind of like it now that I've seen it. I think the whole idea is to actually step the knight back to the d6 square and kick the white queen away.
Yeah, you can kick the white queen back. I'm not sure where it goes, but yeah, for example, the white queen could step back, maybe attacking this pawn. It's still unclear. I mean, if we go to the current position, white is really here. Pragg is begging for these knights to come off the board. He's kind of chasing the black knight around, just offering this trade. I'm not sure I would capture now. Maybe it's still fine. White does have the option of capturing away from the center. Normally, we say that this is positionally undesirable, taking pawns away from the center, but you do open up a line for your rook, potentially. Normally, you should capture towards the center, so you don't ruin your pawn structure, and the white king actually has a nice safe escape square. And yeah, here I'm expecting a knight trade finally, but it still feels like it should be good for black.
The evaluation did not like that move.
I'm trying to figure out why. I can't see a tactic in the current position. Maybe you just exchange things off, and maybe you just keep things simple, and then start thinking about pushing one of these 2 pawns. Yeah, I'm surprised it says that much. I know black is better, and I think we have discussed how black's position is easier to play because of these pawns, but it's not winning yet.
I just peeked at the computer, and the computer says it's good for what? It's good for black, regardless. Any knight move is good. It's like knight takes, but the best one is my move. That was a surprise. Jumping back to attack the queen.
And when the queen steps back, she doesn't have too many promising squares. I guess you can just defend your central pawn with your queen, and Okay, Ding plays it. Of course he finds the best move. That's why he's the world number 2. And I think we're heading towards this position. The black queen will defend her pawn. And now black is actually, with the queen over on this side, is getting ready to support some of these pawns marching forward. Interesting stuff. These 2 black knights are just perfect defenders. They actually cover a lot of important squares.
Yeah, they're the dream knights, aren't they? The dream team.
Yeah, no nightmare there.
Oh, nice. I like that one, David. Gosh, it's really, really tense in this position, you know, especially because Praggnanandhaa doesn't have so much time. He's struggling.
The minute.
Positionally, you know, he is not down materially, but positionally, he has to do a bit of repair work. And, yeah, it feels like it could actually swing any moment. And, well,
Knights on
Kaya.
F5.
Yay. Must be good news for Pragg. Is it?
It can be traded off, though.
Okay.
That's the problem. The knight's gone on such a journey just to get there. I mean, that knight has spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves to get there. Both white knights have actually moved 6 times, and no trade yet. One of the black knights attacks the white queen. Now the trade does happen, so white's attacking knight did disappear. And it's all about the knights jumping. It's so hard to explain or even figure out why these knights have been dancing around so much. Both the white knight and the black knight now, maybe they just balance each other out. They're both on very decent active squares. I just don't really understand what white's doing. White's queen and knight alone, they need backup, they need support to attack. But there is no backup. The 2 rooks on the open A line, they just balance each other out. Black's queen does a great job of defending all the pawns in her half.
The queen is cut off, as you mentioned earlier. That was a sign. And I'm thinking, is it the time? Is it time now to maybe get going with those pawns on the left? I keep saying queenside pawns today.
Queenside pawns.
They are queenside pawns.
And maybe about to become queens.
Yes.
Maybe.
Even better, actually.
So if he's able to queen Ding, which of them is the star? Is it possible to say already?
Ooh, he
That
knows
one?
now.
Beth. Beth the B pawn is the star, and the reason why I would say Beth the B pawn is the queen, because basically the knight can help control the queening square.
Yeah, if you think about its promotion square, as Jovanka said, this one can be supported by the black knight later. But not just that, this pawn is propelled forward. The queen is basically like the engine behind the pawn, pushing it forward down the board. And I think there's going to be a pawn sacrifice next move or on the next few turns from Ding. It looks like this pawn is blocked for now, but firstly, I don't know what white does. For example, you just move your rook somewhere. This black pawn is just going to give itself up in order for the other pawn to march down the board. And this pawn is going to cost white a rook. And, OK, Pragg, he didn't find anything better. He just moved his king. How does that improve the position? I don't
Did it with
understand.
9 seconds left on the clock. He is under pressure.
It's time now, I think. Ding, firstly, you can, I don't know whether you trade a set of rooks first, but now it might be time to start pushing this pawn forward and break through with your other pawn. Let's keep an eye on the players, because Praggnanandhaa must be so stressed right now. I think he's going to fall to defeat. The evaluation bar says, what, +5? That means a new queen might appear on the board.
It's incredible, actually. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the bulldozer appearing and the B pawn making its way to its destiny. Oh, I love that.
Push this pawn forward, then maybe trade a set of rooks, and the final touch would be pushing this pawn forward, or maybe even jumping forward with the knight. And next move, this pawn is coming. There we go. The avalanche continues. And the pawns, yeah, this is what we call a pawn storm. These 2 pawns winning the game. We called it earlier, and it's happening. So in answer to Heidi's question earlier, when to push the pawns, you just wait until all your pieces are ready, and then you support the pawns with your queen, with your knight. And, yeah, he just needs to find the right way, I think, Pragg. Sorry, Ding here, but Pragg is about to fall to defeat. It's partly about the clock, but Ding's just been another level. It's not one big blunder from Pragg, it's just a series of small mistakes, and Ding has smoothly taken it.
It just seems like the white pieces are too far away to defend, and the black pieces are more can support a lot more.
Yeah, you're right there. And, I mean, that white queen is just completely cut off. The white queen's actually on the diagonal of the promotion square of the black pawn, but black's knight cuts it off. I think the black knight can, yeah, there we go, take a pawn. Next move, that pawn is moving forward. White's rook will disappear.
Ruthless play by Ding. Very, very impressive. I feel like this is, yeah, like you say, model game.
Yeah.
Dream.
Only 35 moves as well so far.
Yeah.
With black, yeah. I think if anyone plays the Queen's Gambit Decline, then this should be top of the list of games to study. I'm just surprised Pragg allowed those pawns forward earlier in the game, but okay, what is this trick? The white rook wants to actually sacrifice itself and to lure away the black queen, because the white queen, remember, is attacking a pawn near the black king. If the black queen disappears, then white maybe has some counterattack against the black king. I think you can just protect a few things here. Maybe we jump in just to show Pragg. He's so tricky here in this position. He's moved his rook up the board. If this pawn pushes down now, then I think his idea is to actually shuffle across with his rook. This looks like a suicide mission for the white rook, giving itself up, attacking the black queen. But if the black queen gets deflected away now, then there's no longer protection of this pawn. This pawn now drops. This is a check, and black's king can't actually escape the checks. If you run this way, the white queen drops back with a check. If you go back, the rook drops with a check, and actually you just repeat the position here. The black king cannot hide safely. So actually a really nasty trick there from Ding. I think the problem, though, is in the current position, this pawn, firstly, you can maybe just move it. Secondly, you can just defend it with your rook. And once you defend your king, this pawn, again, is just going to win the game.
Yeah, I love that rook move. It's just so small, but it's so good as well, because you renew the threat. And
super safe now, the king and rook. It's as if they just castled.
No tricks either from Pragnananda, and that's all you need to do. Keep control of these wild positions.
Yeah, and this pawn, again, white just has to give up his rook for this pawn at some point. It's too good. It's going to become a new queen.
But I have to kind of compliment Pragg for finding a trick like this, because, you know, you can imagine if you didn't have too much time on the clock, this is something that you could well fall into.
I think I would definitely fall into this trick, into Pragg's trap, if it was a blitz game. And there we go, Ding. Of course, he plays the safest move, and now this pawn is going to win the game.
6 seconds, 5 seconds. The clock is ticking down, and he has to make a move.
Okay, he drops his knight back. That's clever as well, but the knight is going to have to give itself up for the black pawn. It's better than giving up a rook, I guess. But there we go. The white knight disappears. The white rook is attacked. White's rook can go somewhere, but it's never going to be able to attack anything. Black simply has an extra knight.
Do you think Pragnananda will resign, or will he kind of try to fight on? OK, he's made a move.
He's a fighter. We've seen that. I've seen him save miraculous positions in the tour this season. Yeah, the problem is for white, there's nothing to bite on. There's nothing to attack. White's queen and rook, they're just looking at pawns that are really well defended. Black's queen is free to run around. And there we go. Attacks the white rook, kicks the white rook out of the black half. I think we might see Pragg resign in a few moves.
Yeah, you can kind of see in his eyes that he knows he's lost this.
Yeah, he looks ready to resign, Pragnananda, but he's not going to resign the match. We did hear in his interview yesterday he lost a game 4 to Anish to take it to tiebreaks, and no problem. He was ready to fight again, and he did win in the blitz tiebreaks. He doesn't seem to be too affected by losses.
I think it helps him as well that it's a 2-day match. Ding, half of Ding's attention will be on the candidates. I think when you're young, it's nice to kind of draw things out, make your slightly older opponents tired. Pragg's definitely not going to be out of this, even if he loses today's match overall. OK, pushing a pawn now in front of the white king. The black knight, though, just... Strong
piece.
It's a free piece, and it's a strong piece.
I feel quite sorry for Pragg, who had to have his exam today.
Yeah.
I'm like, why couldn't his teachers just let him off for one day?
Yes, as well, right? You know, the biggest chess talent in India, maybe. Just, you know, can take the exams next week.
Yeah.
Pretty good excuse, you know, playing against the world #2 chess player in one of the biggest events of his life, so far, at least. Yeah, do you find it difficult, Heidi, to bounce back from defeats?
Yeah, because I start questioning everything about myself when I lose chess. Not just my chess playing skills, but like my whole life. And yeah, so it's very hard. I take losses very, very hard.
It seems to be something about chess with, you know, losses, even having you question your life choices. And we do have a result. Pragnananda, he does lose the first game in the final in chess.